So here's something that's probably never been taught to you, and this is probably a little bit more geared towards my elite amateur players, maybe some club champions, tour players, mini tour players, and elite high school juniors. What are the KPIs that you need to work on based upon all the data in the world to breaking 70? We've gone through breaking 100, breaking 90, breaking 80. If that's where you are and that's the goal that you have, go check those out. But if you're trying to break that magical numbers and get into the 60s, I'm going to tell you what are the 2 KPIs that you need to focus on to master so that you give yourself the best odds of shooting in the 60s. So the big question is this: how do passionate golfers like you and I develop a stock shot day in and day out? A stock shot that's as reliable as the sun coming up in the morning. That's the question, and this podcast is the answer. Welcome to Stock Shot Secrets. So breaking 70, right? Like that for the high school golfer, that's a big deal, right? Like a lot of times you'll have college coaches, right? And they'll say, hey, like you're really good, but we really need to see that one low number, right? You get that one low number. Now we go, hey, we know you can shoot 65. Show us you can do it, right? Or for the tour players, right? Like mini tour players. I had a tour player that I was working with on mini tours. He averaged 69.5. And out of, I think it was like 36 tournaments, he made like 4 cuts. So like mini tour golf is hard, right? Corn Ferry Tour, you look at those winners every week, they're shooting like 20, 25 under par, right? PGA Tour, the guys on the Corn Ferry Tour are playing easier courses, so that's why they go so deep. But like the PGA Tour like is extremely hard, right? Like Bearfield Village here in Dublin, Ohio is impossible. That place is so difficult. If I break 80, I'm excited. Right? So the question is what are the KPIs based upon all the stats that you need to break 70? And there's really 2. And when I tell you about them, it's going to be not obvious, but like you'll be like, oh yeah, but you know what? I actually don't practice those as much as I should. So the first one is scoring average with your long iron. So basically shots from 200 to 225 yards. And you go, well, that's kind of different. I go, and why do you think, if I was going to ask you a question, why do you think the KPI of 200 to 225 is so important? And you would say par 5s and par 3s. So if you're a scratch golfer and you're trying to break 70, my guess is, right, you're probably playing distances that are longer, maybe in like the 7,000 yard range. So with that, usually golf course designers will design 1, maybe 2 par 3s that are fairly long, like 210, 215, right? And with those, you're hitting 5 irons, 4 irons in. And if you can hit those things and basically hit the green, then you are massively, massively in strokes gained, right? Meaning, if you can play par 3s even par, you are way ahead of the curve. I remember one time when I was playing professional golf, my instructor, Mike Bender, he goes, hey, Kyle, I want to ask you a question. What would you rather have? Would you rather play, or would you do this, right? If I said you can play every par 3 for the year, even par, and that was it, or you had to play them, right? And obviously I needed to shoot in the 60s because I'm playing professional golf, and I was like, at that time, I was like, I think I'd rather play because I do better than that. And that's like, no. Like if you're trying to break 70, if you can play par 3s even par, you are lapping the field, right? That is where players, whether you're shooting in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, or 100s, par 3s is like those. That's kind of where you can make massive gains in strokes gained, right? To move your score better, right? Because that's kind of where we end up making bogeys and doubles and so on and so forth. So pretty much all par 3s are red light holes to where you should just be trying to make par, standing on the tee box and saying, how do I get out of here with a par, right? Because the odds, just based upon percentages of you making a birdie, are not real good, right? So we need to try to make pars. So that scoring average from 200 to 225 is really important. And it's also important because of par 5 scoring, right? Because on those golf courses where you're playing, you probably got 1 par 5, maybe 2, where you could get home in 2 from like 220 yards. And those are the things where if you could go in and you could hitch, like it's say your 4-iron, your hybrid, whatever it may be, and you can hit the green and get out of there with a birdie, maybe even sneak in an eagle, that's another massive jump, right? So the par 3 and the par 5 scoring for breaking 70 is really, really important. And now if I tell you that, you go, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? Because the truth is that, and kind of, I don't know, enlightening, but if you look at this, like if you look at the scoring average from 180 yards, it's 3.03 on tour from the fairway, meaning on tour, it takes just over 3 shots to get into the hole on average. So if you think about it, if you were to make a par from 180, you're actually making 0.03 tenths of a birdie if you were on the PGA Tour. And that's a different way of thinking, right? So if it's like you got a 7-iron in your hand, or an 8 or a 6-iron, because that's what you hit into a green, right? 180 yards if you're shooting 72 or so, 75, then you go, man, if I just make a par here, I'm like making a little tiny birdie, and those are kind of like strokes gained. So like you would be positive strokes gained in that point, right? Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Stock Shot Secrets podcast. If you are enjoying it, be sure to like this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can always see when they're coming out. And most importantly, if you would be so kind to be able to share this podcast with other passionate golfers who are trying to get better and build stock shots, because it grows through you sharing it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now back to Stock Shot Secrets. So 200 to 225 par 3s, right? That's that, and par 5s. And then the second one is one putt percentage, basically putting inside 3 to 5 feet, right? So like if you miss it, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like it's going to be pretty hard to shoot 65 if you miss 3-footers. Like you're not supposed to make 9 and 10 footers, but you can't miss 3-footers. You've got to make all your 3, 4, and 5 footers. So, and that's where, like, if you miss a 3-footer on the PGA Tour, it is so penal. I don't remember the number, but it's something like, if you miss it, it costs it is like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Like, you can't miss those 3-footers. And when you can make those 3 to 5 footers, like one, it saves you from, because you're going to miss greens, right? But it's probably your up and downs. It's probably maybe that one opportunity that you hit a 45-foot lag putt to 5 feet. And then, like, you got to make that for par to keep the momentum going. It's the one wedge you stuff in there to 3 or 4 feet. Like, you got to make that one. And those are the putts that you have to really capitalize on if you want to go and break 70, right? And I think a lot of times, especially for who I'm talking to on this podcast specifically, which is like the elite amateur and junior and college player, the reason why you would be missing 3, 4, and 5 footers isn't probably because of your technical skills. Your technical skills are probably pretty good, but what you are needing to do more of is you're not doing enough competing in your practice. So that is where I would do and formulate games for you and encourage you to where when you're trying to go putt and you're trying to practice, make practice really, really hard, right? Make it so that when you're trying to go at, like, you're failing, and then you win, right? You want something to where a game you always want to try to win the game. Like, you want to make the rules so it's easy enough to win, but it's hard enough to where you fail. That's like a sweet spot, right? So we want to make it to where, if let's just say you're doing 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, right? So you do a circle. You got 5 balls. You got 5 around at 3 feet, 5 around at 4 feet, 5 around at 5 feet. And you got to go 3 times around the 3 feet, 4 times around the 4 feet, and 5 times around the 5 feet, right? Or you could maybe flip it, right? If you're doing that, like, you're going to do it and you're going to fail, and then 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 you're going to fail. And then the 5th fail, and you're like, God, I got to get this. You're frustrated. You want to quit, but then you're like, no, I have to do this because I want to shoot in the 60s. So then you do it again, and you fail. And then the 7th time, you fail. And then the 8th time, you're probably like 45 minutes in now, and then you get it, and you're like, yes, I'm amazing. I'm so amazing, right? Like, I can do hard things, right? And then that allows you to start to build your confidence so that when you're walking off the course, you're used to feeling like what that anxiety is. And that's something that a lot of players lack in their practice, right? It's something that I wish, going back in time, I would have done way better. I remember going out to the PGA Tour once, working with a player, and I was sitting there and we were doing a game, and I was like, hey, like, it's getting late. Like, we probably need to go hit some balls. Like, let's go hit. And he's like, Kyle, like, if I don't win this game, I should just withdraw from the tournament. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, my confidence will be shot. Like, I have to win. If I don't win the game, like, my brain will be a mess. I couldn't. And that's like a different mindset than all of us, right? Like, he had to compete. So Try to work on those two things. Like when you're trying to practice, obviously do what you're doing with your drivers and your irons and stuff, but try to make a point to working on those long irons, those like 4 irons and 5 irons, as well as working on those putts inside 5 feet. You can't miss those puppies, all right? So work on those two main things. If you're trying to break 70, make sure that you work those into those practices. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of Stock Shot Secrets. Now, as a listener of Stock Shot Secrets, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to get better. So if you were to go to stockshotclub.com, I'm going to give you 7 days free access where you can send us your video and we will give you personalized individual attention as to what you need to do so that you can start building stock shots. So just go to stockshotclub.com and register there. We'll give you 7 days free where you can try it. And then if we like it, you can stay inside the Stock Shot Club where we can become your coach and walk with you for your entire journey. Thank you so much. And be sure to go visit stockshotclub.com.